What is happening? It's your boy Roy, and it's another episode of Sync Gems. I am in nature again, as you can hear. Not really nature, but I'm in the park walking barefoot. And I want to talk about the subject of quantity versus quality. And it's a very controversial subject, as if you've heard a few podcasts, you can see that it's pretty divided. The opinions can go to a lot of places, and I've found myself in a few discussions lately which involve the quality versus quantity paradigm. And it was fascinating because to me, I come into things with a pretty open mind, and I'm ready to soak in information. I try to give up on my ego and what I know from before and after, and what I will know after, and just immerse myself in the wealth of information of the other person who's on the other side. It's not always easy because sometimes it's in contrast to what I know. But I've had a really interesting conversation with a friend and a mentor of mine, which was just fascinating. And through his story, I actually really had time to reflect and kind of draw my conclusions from it. I'm gonna go in from a different angle, but before I do that, please, before you do anything, if you have not yet liked and subscribed to the podcast on your platform, on your listening platform, please do that. It really, really helps to see that I'm doing something that matters, and also to have more ears on the podcast that listen to my content. And that'll enable this year's guests that are coming on, and will be nothing short of amazing. So it's all thanks to you. Thanks for rating and sharing and doing all that. I love y'all. And without further ado, let's get into it. Transition sound. Birds. No, there's no transition sounds. I'm just gonna shoot it as is. And I'm going to start by talking, before we get into the quantity quality. I will build it up to it. But before I do, I want to talk about why making mistakes and owning these mistakes is so important. Because it will connect to the story of my mentor, which his name will remain nameless. And I think that avoiding making mistakes is the dumbest advice that one can give. Why do I make this argument? It's pretty cliche, but fuck it. But making mistakes is the cornerstone of becoming better. It's like a diamond comes from friction, and so are the most successful people. And those who tell you that they don't have that kind of stuff are just straight up lying to you, or they came in and somebody gave them all the amazing things they've gotten in their life, and somehow they landed on a pink cloud and never hustled a day in their life, which is cool. That's a cool piece of information, but you're not gonna hear it here, because making mistakes is a must. And if you're not looking at it as making mistakes now, maybe you look at it like that in 10 years. But I feel like loving one's mistakes and being able to to look at yourself compassionately with and without these mistakes you're making is the most important thing to persevere, especially in an industry like we are in, like the music and sync specifically. Why am I saying that? Because I've licensed tracks, I've given tracks to libraries that have not done anything in 5 years. Sorry, you know what? I had an album that I gave about 5 years ago or something like that, or 4 years ago, that I saw $7 from last year. So that's my ROI for all the hours that I put for it. And it's okay. It was the mistake was I didn't look at the library good enough. I just got accepted, and I was like, fuck yeah, I got accepted. Let's go. And that ignorance has propelled me to keep on working with different libraries without looking back and looking at it as a mistake. I saw pretty early that I was making the mistake, but it didn't demotivate me. And I hope that it'll also help somebody out there that maybe has made a bad deal, because these are prevalent today. There's a lot of little things and little kinds of deals that may make you feel like you're making a mistake, but that's where diversification comes in. You know, these mistakes, doesn't matter how good these really high caliber people are, or how they speak about, I wish I've never done this. I wish I'd never made this mistake. I wish I would have never done more quantity over quality, or more upfronts than less upfronts, because now it's fucking me over because my stuff is succeeding and all that kind of stuff. It's just things that have made these successful people successful. You know what I mean? So people who tell me, I wish I didn't do that, it just shows that they haven't reflected on their so-called mistakes enough. So let's get back to to my mentor's story. He's older than me. He's an OG, and he hasn't been on the podcast, so you won't be able to guess who that is. But what he was saying was, my 50 latest tracks have made me in the past few years more than the 2,000 before it, which is crazy. Like, think about it. The person's been in the industry forever, and his 50 latest tracks have made him more than the 2,000 that he made before it. But he still has been making a living for a long while. So now his living is just way, way better. He's making his living way, way better. And he has the luxury to put more time into every track. Do I have that luxury? Nope. And a lot of the people listening to this also don't have that luxury. They're still pumping out tracks because y'all are trying to see that return on investment, this early income that will enable you to maybe rent a choir somewhere, or I don't know. There are cheap ways of doing a lot of these things, but I still don't have the resources to hack this yet. And a lot of people I know too. It's a slippery slope to look at it as, wow, if I started from day one now, I would just put in a month on a track, or 2 weeks on every track, and these 20 tracks that I'll, not 20 tracks, sorry. 20 something tracks that I make a year are going to make a living for my whole life. But that's not necessarily the truth. That's when you get better at sucking, and when you get better at understanding what works and what not, then you start making things that are actually very relevant. You understand the sounds that are being used, you understand the landscape, and then you can make 20 tracks that actually are fed into the industry in a seamless way. So that is a little bit of my 1 cent on these on this opinion of people saying that quantity has to come in first, and you have to put in all the work in one track and give it your whole life for this time and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But you know what? People who do it on the side and want to make it a full-time living, that sounds pretty heavy to me. And yes, and I feel like seeing yourself as a professional is a must in this industry, and also realizing that you're progressing and paying your dues and getting taken advantage of. That'll happen. That happened to me many times, and I still consciously get taken advantage of in this industry. How I know it sounds so fucked up, but if we talk for real for a second, right now, getting into these big labels that are making big money and that are making their artists big money, they don't just take on new artists to their roster. So sometimes you're going to have somebody written on your track and taking 50% just because it's a track for Universal. So he's basically using your capabilities in order to pump another track to Universal, which has happened to me, and happened to me a few times in the past few years. But it's a time where I take advantage. I take that chance. I take advantage of the opportunity, and the person in front of me takes advantage of my capabilities, which is a good sign, right? Because if somebody's taking advantage of my capabilities to go higher in their music career, it means that I have good capabilities. I have good game. Something is looking good for me. Later on, I'll be able to be taken advantage of less. But right now, in the stage that I'm in my career, getting taken advantage of is not that bad of a deal, because I'm just exploring all these facets. Yes, sometimes some would say, yeah, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't take that, and I still take it just so I can understand on my own skin what it feels like. People who say learn from other people's mistakes, I feel like are people who want you to have things very easily, and that's just how, let's say, like governments work a lot of times. They give you everything, right? Nobody grows their own plants these days. I mean, some people do. Some of my friends do, and I want to actually down the line, but they give you everything, so you don't know how to do it, and then you depend on them. And that's something I don't want in my life. I don't want dependence. I want to make it in the industry in my own terms. And I do it as I adjust, right? Like I make a lot of little investments of time and energy in different labels and different composers that give me the opportunity to work with them. And I gauge down the line. I wait for a bit. I see, well, that deal is not good as the other one, but it's making me more money, so I'll just keep working on it. Like, why the hell not? When I have the luxury to choose exactly the gigs that I'm taking, and am able to put the price and the stamp on them, that'll be a great place to be in. But you know what? I love where I'm at too. And I feel like it's a great exercise to just ask myself, like, why am I happy actually with where I'm at? Because of course, when I'll get that Spider-Verse placement, I'll be stoked. But what avoids me from being stoked right now? What keeps me from being stoked at this moment? And there's no practical reason, you know? There's actually no practical reasons for that. For me, I've had a bit of a dark time lately, a little bit of an identity crisis, one would say, where I ask myself, am I making the right choice? And am I making the choice? You know, like, if you believe in God, then you believe in divine intervention. You believe in something that is, they call it in Arabic maktub, and also in Hebrew too, we say maktub, and it means that everything is written. And I'm not religious or anything like that, but there is something in me that really believes that all the challenges and all the mistakes that we make and all these shitty times and fucking war in the Middle East and, you know, like, in all these crazy things, it's what other way to think about it than it happens for a reason. I don't see another way to think about and stay sane. And I hope I'll think like that down the line. And I'm not making anything my identity is another thing that I want to speak to, because turning something into your identity is dangerous, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. Why? You ask me? Because when I am in my identity, when I identify with or as something, or as in sync, is like, I identify as somebody who only takes up front payments. I am somebody who only does customs, or I only take stuff that has sync fees. That's all right when you have the luxury. And if you have the luxury, then go ahead. But for me, the way to go about it is to just realize what I want to do and who I want to work with. And then down the line, bring it into life. Because if I don't know what it's like to work for upfront fees, why am I resisting it so much? I mean, some things like, you know, let's take a really crazy thing like murdering. I'm not going to try to murder somebody because I don't know what it's like. But with things that I actually don't know how they really, really work, and that there are so many different stories and outlooks on, I cannot judge how it will look for myself when I execute on them. So to date, I've gotten my biggest check from an album that I've made. But before that, the first big significant check I got was from royalties. And then I got one that was bigger from a sync fee / an ad that my music got placed in. Then I moved forward and made the biggest check from an album that I've made that paid upfront. So to me, this is the way to see that I'm heading up in some sort of way. You know, I actually have the numbers to back it up. And that leads me to the conclusion where there is no one way to do things. There's no avoiding mistakes. It just doesn't exist. And if that person, my mentor, wouldn't have done these 2,000 probably amazing tracks on my skill, but on his they were average. If he wouldn't have done these, he probably wouldn't have gotten to where he's at, where he can actually make the tracks that he wants to make and hire the people he wants to hire. So I'm really grateful for the lessons that he has spoken to me, because they've made me reflect on where they meet me. Another thing that I see that I really want to emphasize, and is emphasized a lot on this podcast, is just look at the content that you're consuming. Please. There's a lot of garbage out there. There's a lot of people who are trying to make it in their own terms, and it's cool, but they're doing it on top of you. So just please notice who the people with the credentials are, and who is authentically there, who is actually authentically walking you through it. There's a few amazing sources for people who actually do amazing work, and there's also a lot of garbage. So just be careful out there. There are people who see it as an opportunity to make a quick buck and have all these clickbait TikTok videos. Just make sure that you know that these exist, and love your mistakes. Love your mistakes. Just sit with them and love them, because the mistakes we make are really what shape us. They really, in the end of the day, without the mistake you've made 5 years ago to choose to go into music, you wouldn't have been where you are right now. And if you trace back your mistakes, I'm sure you'll find a lot of mistakes that are just inseparable from your personality today. So own it, love it, and be with it. I think I've talked about everything I wanted to speak about. If there's anything you'd like to hear me rant on, just let me know. Man, and if you've listened to it so far, these 23 minutes, and you're in Europe, just know that we have a mastermind happening tomorrow, Thursday, on it's gonna be around 4. It's London. It's gonna be 4 London time, so it's gonna be 6 Israel time. I think 5 France time. I don't know. If you're in Europe, just come through. Really high caliber people are coming, and I hope to see you too. Don't forget to give this podcast a rating and a review, because these are what these things keep the podcast going, and these actually keep me going and show me my mistakes and my successes. So please go ahead and do that. Thank y'all for sticking with me and for listening to my ideas. Y'all can contact me at Roy Mass on socials. And that's it. One more thing before we tune out. I want to challenge myself in front of you and challenge you to maybe challenge you. And I want to decrease my social media consumption. So I am going to limit myself to 2 times of looking at socials, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening. I'm going to limit myself for now to 30 minutes. And social media is actually, include Instagram and LinkedIn for now. And that's it. That is it. I'm going to take on this challenge and let you know how it's going for me. I may break it tomorrow. I don't know. But I feel like I need to change in that sense. So I'm taking this on, and yeah, hopefully you got something from it. Love y'all. Sync Gems. Peace.